Hello and welcome to my masterclass on summer holiday survival, where I will share with you simple screen-free solutions for less conflict and boredom and more creativity and harmony during the holidays. I'm so glad that you're giving your time to be with me here today, and I know that you're going to have tons of value in this masterclass, which will last for the next 45 minutes or so. So thank you for being here. So does this look familiar? We start off the holidays often with lots of excitement and possibility of all the wonderful memories and the happy times that we'll have at home together with our children. And often we get to the end of the holidays feeling a little bit stressed and burnt out and looking forward to sending our children off back to school. But it doesn't have to be that way. And in the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to share with you some super simple fundamental things that you can do to look after yourself and make sure that you're not feeling completely worn out by the end of the holidays, but also to allow your children to explore their creativity and to find really productive and effective ways of using their time in the holidays without it causing you lots of stress and without you having to spend a ton of money and time entertaining them. So this is for you if the thought of having your children home for weeks on end is daunting. Perhaps you feel stuck with how to keep them entertained without tons of screen time, and you're worried that they are spending too much time on screens and you want to come up with other ways of helping them entertain themselves. You want them to use screens in a healthy and productive way where they are building their social and emotional skills and interpersonal skills, reflective, creativity, compassion, all these amazing skills that we want to build in our children, how you can actually use screen time for in really positive ways. Maybe you need simple ideas to help them turn boredom into creativity and independent play, because I know that boredom can be a real struggle for children and their parents in the holidays. So how can you use that? Why is boredom important? And how can you use that in a really useful and effective way? You want to ensure that you're taking care of yourself during the holidays to keep your sanity intact. So just a few simple ways of holding boundaries for yourself and setting limits. And also using this framework for setting limits where you'll have fewer power struggles and conflict and more peace, fun and harmony. Because I know often when you've got lots of people at home for extended periods of time, it can lead to tension, it can lead to conflict and disagreements. So how can you have less of that and more joy, peace and harmony over the break? So if you relate to any of this, then you are in the right place. And I know that you're going to get lots from this masterclass. Who am I to teach you? If you don't know me already, I'm Jehan. I'm a parent coach and I equip parents to find that really tricky balance between gentle and connected parenting, but also maintaining their leadership in a really empowered and conscious way, and to be the gentle authority in the home. So that you can raise children who are really resilient, who are confident, and who are prepared to reach their full potential in life. I'm a mother of two children myself. These are my daughters in the picture. They're 11 and 13. So I know what it's like to be in the teen phase, but I've also been through the years of parenting young children, and I know it can be very difficult. And I bring my wealth of personal experience as well as my professional experience, where I worked as a school counselor and an educator for 8 years in an international school. So I worked with hundreds or possibly thousands of teenagers and supported their parents. And I taught them things around digital citizenship and well-being and how to have a really healthy relationship with screens. I've heard the perspective of the children. I've supported their parents, and I bring all that anecdotal experience into this masterclass to share with you what really works for parents and children. I'm also a trained counselor, so I have that experience in mental health and family therapy. So these are all the things I bring to the work I do with parents. So here's an overview of what you will learn in this masterclass. We'll really quickly touch on healthy routines and habits, and just for wellness and general well-being. So how you can make sure the holiday time, all those routines and habits don't go out the window. and why they're really important, and some simple things you can do to maintain good routines and structure. We'll talk about how to use screen time to build social emotional learning so that your children are really getting the most out of their time on screens, and you're not feeling guilty all the time for giving them screens, but you're feeling really confident that it is going to be a positive influence in their lives. Why boredom's important and how you can turn that into creativity and imagination, and how you can set limits, like I said, using my 5C framework, setting limits whilst also building connection. So there's less fighting, disagreements, threatening, and negativity, and just more peace and harmony in the home. So let's get into healthy habits and routines. So we all know that routines and structure really promote well-being, and that we all operate really well with some degree of routine and structure. And obviously in the holidays, some of this is going to go out the window as we become a little bit more flexible with things that are happening. And this is great. But if there's too much flexibility, if children lack any routine and structure in the day, this can lead to them feeling a little bit irritable or insecure. And it can also put a lot of pressure on us as parents because we just don't have that structure in the day. So I find sleep and meal times are two things where we can try to maintain a little bit of routine with fairly regular wake up and sleep times. Obviously, there'll be a little bit of difference, and we want some flexibility in the holidays, but like I said, if it's too much and if everybody is just going to sleep at all kinds of hours and waking up at different hours, we kind of lose a little bit of the structure and planning in the day. Also, meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner are three important points of the day that just break up the day, give the day some structure, and are opportunities for us to come together as a family, if that's possible, and connect and just share and like bond and create that sort of connection time. Healthy screen habits. So it depends very much on the age of your children, but I generally recommend to parents that we try to avoid screens in bedrooms, especially, smartphones in bedrooms. And certainly after a certain time, we should be trying to make sure that the children don't have screens in their rooms, and maybe we can role model that ourselves just to protect their sleep, to protect their mental health. There's more and more and more evidence that's showing that smartphones are having a really negative influence on our children's mental health. So just to try to create really a healthy relationship with their screen time. Having screen-free times of the day, meal times are a really great example. And in our family, meal times are strictly no screens. So that's just a time when we can put that away, take a break, and spend time together. Balancing offline with online activities. So yes, they will be spending perhaps more time on screens, but if we can also just make sure they're getting some balance with things that are offline as well. Helping them spend time outdoors. Just being outdoors is great for their well-being and their mood. It means probably that they're getting a little bit of exercise and movement, which is also really important just for their overall well-being. And as much as they are connecting with people online, and that can be really great depending on those connections, and that's something we would like as parents to know a little bit about who they are chatting with online, but also it's really important that they have those interactions face to face. And we're seeing more and more teenagers and young people are finding it very difficult to build in real life relationships. So providing opportunities for children to do that, whether it's with family members, neighbors, friends, even just if they come out on errands with you, like having conversations with people in the supermarket, etc., just to build that confidence and create those positive relationships. So that's on healthy habits and routines around general wellness, but also balancing offline and online activities. These are important to remember during the holidays, but they're just generally important guidelines to remember all the time. So how can children learn social emotional skills using screen time? So one way is, and the most obvious thing to say is that as parents, we want to try to be involved and know a little bit about what our children are doing online. So show interest in the things that they're doing, asking them questions, and just having discussions about what's happening for them online. Being able to draw connections between things that are online in their online world and things that are in real life. So it's not like two separate worlds, but how we can integrate them and make those connections, help our children make those connections for themselves. Where children are watching shows or something, they can try to participate. So because there's a lot of evidence that shows that active screen time use can be really positive for their well-being, whereas passive screen time use is less good for their well-being. So active screen use means that they're actually engaging with what they're seeing online. They're not just sort of passive recipients of what they're seeing. So when they're watching a show, encouraging them to sing along, dance along, just get involved in what's happening online. Discussing how we feel about characters. So just asking them questions about, who their favorite characters are, what they think of them, and using opportunities to point out positive role models in the shows that they're watching or the things that they're doing online, so that they can actually look for positive influences in the people that they're engaging with online, the characters they're seeing in shows. We can find opportunities to teach our children values through what they're seeing online. So even when it's something that maybe we don't agree with, something that is not aligned with our values, that can be a really important discussion point around what's right and wrong. And we can ask questions to help our children think about values and morality and things like that through what they're watching. So this just all involves us being a little bit actively involved in what our children are seeing online, showing interest in the things that they're interested in, just trying to build that connection with them. Here are things we can ask them. What do you love about a particular show? Now, when we ask questions, our kids questions, things like this, when we ask our children questions like this, it helps them build their reflective capacity. So they're having to actually reflect and think, and it kind of builds self-awareness. So these are really good questions to be asking our children. What do you love about a TV show? What do you love about that particular game? Why do you love playing it so much? What do you love about it? What maybe do you not love so much about it? What do you think of a particular character? So getting them to analyze the qualities of different characters that they're seeing online. What do you think of the way X responded to Y? So we're helping them, again, reflect on relationships in the things that they're seeing online, and then inviting them to reflect on that in their own lives. So how would you respond in that situation? How do you think X felt when this happened? How would you feel? How is that different? So just these are really, really kind of powerful questions we can ask our children to get them thinking, reflecting, analyzing, putting themselves in other people's shoes. So they're building that empathy and compassion. They're getting other perspectives. They're recognizing how maybe the way they think is different from how someone else thinks, and why that might be different, how their values maybe are different from the characters they're seeing online, how they would do things differently. So these are really amazing conversations to just really think critically about what they're watching and doing. If you could write a different ending, what could it be? So we're really inviting them to explore their creative side, their storytelling side. If you would add another character into that show, what would that character be like? What would their name be? What would they look like? So we're developing their storytelling skills also by inviting them to think about these questions. What should X have done instead of this? So again, inviting problem solving kind of skills into this. Tell your dad about that really funny thing that happened in something that they love to watch. Now, this seems like a really simple question, but when our child knows that we are interested in something that they're interested in, but not only are we interested in it, but we're also inviting the other parent to show an interest in it. This is so validating. So questions like this can really help to build connection and help our children feel really valued. And then we can use opportunities where we've seen characters in a movie or something show really positive attributes to really kind of anchor into that and help our children notice that. So saying things like, I love the way X didn't give up. She kept trying even when it was hard, and she eventually did it. Can you think of a time that happened for you? So we're noticing an attribute of perseverance or resilience, and we're pointing that out to our children and what that looks like, on a in a different character. And then asking them to relate it back to their own lives. So here are some examples of how we can use screen time. So it could be gaming, it could be shows they're watching, it could be interactions that they're seeing online. It might be that in the chat they've seen people, other people chatting, and if you can ask them questions around, what kind of conversations are you seeing in the comments on YouTube videos maybe they've seen, or chat or games that they're playing, often other children, or they might be involved in conversations, or even on social media. We don't need to shut all these things off or be afraid of it as parents. We can actually use these as really useful teaching points for our children. So that's social emotional learning and screen time. Now we're going to talk about setting limits using my 5C framework. And why I think this is really important to talk about, especially in the context of holidays, is, like I said, sometimes when we're all home together, there can be more tension and arguments. We're all kind of, we're trying to balance our own needs as parents and our other commitments with meeting our children's needs. And sometimes there can just be a little bit of a clash. So how can we help it go more smoothly? And if we can really be mindful about setting limits and boundaries around our children's behavior, making sure our expectations are really clear, that we're following up with them and we're enforcing, some rules and limits, that they're really clear about what those are, so that they also know what's okay and what's not, and that gives them a sense of security. So firstly, whenever we have a rule or some sort of limit, we want to have conviction in why we're setting that limit. Why is that important? And that's important for several reasons. One, it helps us to explain to our child why we're setting this rule, and especially as children get older. So for preteens and teens, it becomes more important to have their buy-in and to have them understand that our rules are just not made up. They're there for a reason. But it also, when we have conviction in the rules that we're setting, it helps us waver less. It helps us be more confident in enforcing those limits. And we don't waver as much, because when we start to waver, when we're setting limits and when our children can sense that we're not sure, this opens a massive door to negotiation and argument and them trying to change our minds, and this can lead to more conflict. And I know in my case, when I've not had conviction about rules I'm setting, when I'm sort of wavering, my children know that they push the limit. I get triggered, and it tends to escalate and ends up with me yelling. So when we have conviction, we can be really calm and we can be consistent. So with consistency, we're not wavering, we're not changing our mind because our child is unhappy with our limit. We're being firm and we're sticking with that limit. Once we've set it, that's it. There may be a situation where you feel like actually that was an unreasonable expectation, or maybe that was a little bit harsh, and you want to change your mind, and that's absolutely fine to do after the event. So I would suggest that when you've set a limit, and then perhaps you think perhaps your child's like, oh, that's not fair, and and maybe you're thinking, yeah, actually maybe that was a bit harsh, maybe that's not fair. But I would suggest that in most situations, it's helpful not to change your mind in that moment, because you're teaching your child that they can convince you and argue and that you'll change your mind. This really depends from child to child, and you need to kind of understand your child's character to know if this is true for your family or not, or for that particular child or not. But as much as possible, be consistent. And if you decide at a later time that you want to shift the rule or you want to change it a little bit, that's fine. You can go back and do that and explain it to your child, but not as a reaction to their meltdown or their tantrum, because it's easier just to change your mind. That's not the best reason to change a rule. Being calm when we set limits. So really soft voice, soft face, eye contact, getting on their level, just being really calm when we set it. Sometimes we think we need to be really strict and harsh, and and like mean when we're setting limits or like disciplining our children. And I think we can do that in a really calm and firm way. We can be compassionate when we're setting limits. So understand that our children may not like them. There might be resistance. They may cry. They may say they hate us. That's fine. They're allowed to show their feelings and we can still stay firm in our limit. So it's empathizing with them whilst we're setting the limit and connecting with where they're at whilst we stay firm with our rule. And then collaborative is, especially, like I said, as they get older, inviting some input from them, because children love it when we give them a little bit of choice, a little bit of autonomy, and just show that we respect their opinions and their thoughts. That doesn't mean we always have to let them decide, but we can sort of invite their input by saying, you know, what sort of time do you think is reasonable for you to go to bed tonight, 8 or 9, or like giving them some input on their curfew or what they do over the weekend, or, you know, making decisions together around how they decorate their room, but just to invite a little bit more collaboration from them. So this is really great because we're encouraging them to learn how to make decisions for themselves, which is a skill that they need to have as adults. So as much as we can prepare them to do that when they're within our care, that's really positive. Here are some examples of what this setting limits sounds like in practice. So a limit sounds like screen time is over. Okay, that's our expectation, our rule. I understand you're upset because you want more time. So that's the empathy and the compassion bit. We're showing that we understand how they feel. We're connecting with them while setting the limit. And then we can redirect them, shift the energy, shift the attention elsewhere so they're not staying stuck in the upset and the sadness and the anger with us. Would you like to play a game or ride your bike outside? So that question invites our child to take responsibility for what they want to do next without just allowing them to stay in that space of annoyance. Maybe your child continues to fuss. They say, no, I don't want to play a game or ride a bike. They're digging their heels in. And this is where it's really important that you stay firm and consistent in your limit, and you don't change your mind, but you say, I understand you wish you could have more screen time. Again, we're connecting with them. We don't need to explain or over justify or over rationalize. We've set the limit and that's enough. Sometimes as parents, we tend to try to rationalize and explain and say, well, you know, we discussed this, da, 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 da. Sometimes the less said, the better. Just saying you're allowed to be upset and I'll be here when you're ready to discuss what you want to do next. So we're staying consistent, we're showing empathy and connection, we're helping shift their attention and redirect them, and we're inviting them to take responsibility for how they want to move forward. Here's one about boundaries. Maybe you're feeling like so much of your time is going into playing with your kids and you need to set some boundaries for yourself. So that was fun playing Legos together. You're connecting, you're showing that you're enjoying that time together. Then you're setting a limit, saying, I'm going to do some work on my laptop now. What would you like to do whilst I do that? So we're setting a limit and again, putting it back to our children to take responsibility for what happens next. Maybe they say, I want to play with you some more. I hear you. You really wish you could play more with me. We're connecting with them. We're showing that compassion. I wish I could play more too. Let's spend a minute together thinking about what else you can do until I'm ready to play with you again later. So an example of how we can assert our boundaries without being strict, without rejecting our children, whilst still maintaining that connection. And a role reversal can be really great when we're constantly having to tell our child not now or later, and they may perceive it like some sort of rejection. And when they're busy playing a game or really involved in something, we can say, oh, I'm going to play with you and you're so busy. And this gives them a sense of power and it really validates them. Sometimes children may feel like we're making fun of them. And if that's the case, then obviously don't do it. You don't want them to feel like we're mocking them. But this role reversal where we're switching, they're the ones who are busy and we're the ones who want to be with them. That can be a really nice feeling for our children. Makes them feel very empowered. So maybe you go shopping with your child and they want to buy something, and you might say, we're not buying new clothes today, the limit. I understand how hard it feels not to have something you really want. There's connection and compassion there. Those jeans are such a cool color. You're validating them. When we get home, let's have a look at how much pocket money you have and think about how much more you need to save before you can afford them. So again, helping our child take responsibility. It's not like a firm no. We're helping them shift to think about how they can make something possible, more of a problem-solving approach. And this is again a nice way to say no, but without it sounding really harsh or mean or strict, or like frustrated. Meal times. I know meal times can be tricky for lots of parents, and lots of parents that I work with. This is an area that causes a lot of tension and conflict, like on a daily basis. Maybe your children are complaining about the food. They wanted fish and chips and it's spaghetti bolognese. You could say, I know this isn't your favorite meal. There's the empathy and the compassion. You'd rather have spaghetti You'd rather have fish and chips. That's not on the menu for tonight. It's spaghetti bolognese. There's the limit. We're not having that. We're having this tonight. Why don't we plan next week's meals together so we can include dinner items we both like? So you're validating them. You're also setting a limit. You're not bending over backwards to accommodate their every desire and request. And you're also validating them by saying, let's make sure we include your preferences next week. And you're inviting them to take some responsibility in how that happens. So remember, two things can be true. One, you can set a limit in love that is the right thing for your child based on your judgment, your intuition, your parental discernment. You set the limit based in love, and that's right for your child. And your child can disagree and be really unhappy with you. Sometimes we feel like when we meet that resistance, maybe there's tears and slamming doors and I hate yous and you're so mean. What can often happen is we start to feel guilty. We start to question ourselves. There's self-doubt that comes in. There's fear. Am I ruining my relationship with my child? Is my child going to start becoming really rebellious? And I really invite the parents I work with to step into that empowered leadership where you can make decisions that are right for your child in love. You can enforce them with connection and gently and really consciously keeping yourself calm because you're a conscious and empowered parent. And your child is allowed to express all their feelings whilst you stay grounded and you hold space for their feelings while staying firm in your limits. So this is what I'm all about, is helping you feel confident to do this while still validating your child and maintaining that really amazing connection with them. Your child may be displeased in the moment, and over time they will come to respect you and your decisions. And they will come to really appreciate the leadership that you took in creating those safe boundaries and limits for them to operate in. Where we balance it with a lot of connection, love, and warmth, we can also step into our leadership and authority as parents. So that's limits. And we're going to talk now about boredom. And this can be something that every parent dreads in the holidays. I'm bored. And it's like pressure to entertain children. And I know that when my children were younger, and I was like this kind of real perfectionist mom, like, I wanted to make sure everything was perfect, that my kids were always entertained, and I was doing all the things. And I was actually pretty miserable as a parent. I questioned myself all the time. And I've found actually that sometimes less is more. And I've really learned to let go and back off a bit and understand that actually sometimes when I'm unavailable, when I let my kids just be, such great things happen. So I'm hoping to share a little bit about what that looks like in these next few minutes. So boredom, firstly, why is boredom so important and what is boredom? So boredom is low arousal and dissatisfaction. It's not a great feeling for kids, especially to feel bored because often they're not used to it. They're used to going to school and having like super scheduled and structured lives, extracurriculars, play dates, and any minute that they have to themselves where they're not busy, they're often online. So they're constantly stimulated and they're not used to just having unstructured time to do nothing. So understanding that it can feel a little bit uncomfortable for our children, it might even make them feel anxious if they're not used to it. And just kind of validating that for them to say, yeah, I know this is new. I know you're not used to it. But also just kind of understanding that it's also a really positive thing. Why? Because boredom is the birthplace of creativity and imagination. It's when we have less stimulation in our environment and our brain has a chance to start to rest and start to recuperate because we're not bombarded with things to do or like stimulation or people talking to us or whatever it is. That's when our brain goes into a different state where we're able to tap into our creativity and imagination. Some of the most brilliant scientists and philosophers and artists have had their best ideas come when they've been in this really relaxed, low arousal state. So it's such an important thing for your children to learn how to get used to. It teaches us not to give up the moment things are repetitive or boring. Like so much of life is not that fun. It's like what work can be boring sometimes. Exercise can be like getting in shape is not always super fun. And sometimes we got to stick with things that are a little bit mundane and a little bit repetitive for a long-term reward, for a bigger purpose. And helping our children to be bored teaches them this really important life skill to stick with things and persevere. And research shows that students with high boredom tolerance are more likely to put in work when something's difficult. They're not likely to just give up because something's not fun. And kids these days, as parents, we're just always trying to make their lives fun and exciting and comfortable and convenient, and actually allowing children to experience inconvenience, boredom, discomfort. These are really great things to allow our children to experience. Boredom helps develop self-awareness because they're there doing nothing. They have time to think. They have time to reflect on themselves. It helps build self-regulation skills, independence, because we're inviting them to really think for themselves how to entertain themselves, planning, what am I going to do, problem solving, and organization skills. How can I organize my own entertainment? Good things happen when boredom strikes. So there have been times, you know, in our lives where where I've chosen to say to my children, right, we're going to not have screens for a whole day or sometimes even longer, a whole week. And great things happen when boredom strikes. There's so many stories I've seen of how conflict has gone down, how kids have just got so imaginative when we allow them the space to do things. So, for example, when I'm just looking on here. Oh, this is quite a long time ago, but yeah. So my daughter put together a schedule Monday to Friday, and she put in all the different things, her activities, but then also times when she was off, and she'd kind of planned her time. So because she knew that she wasn't going to have screen time, and I see we've got power cuts on the schedule, so that's interesting. Must have been a time when we had power cuts. Then other times she's decided to clean. So once she started mopping the house and she put up these signs everywhere saying caution wet floor. But this just shows you how initiative, planning, like problem solving, all these things happen when they get bored. So we need to allow them the space to do that. This is again a while ago where we were at my parents' house and we were just hanging out one morning and we decided to dress up in my parents' clothes and just be really silly. So creativity strikes when we allow, and silliness and fun, and good things happen when boredom strikes. How do you handle it? So your child's complaining, they're bored, maybe you're feeling triggered, you're like, annoyance. Remember, it's not an emergency. Remember, it's an opportunity. It's a good thing when they start to feel bored. Tell them it's okay, and just check in with your own feelings. Take some deep breaths if you need to, like just ground yourself. Tell them it's okay to be bored. It's not a bad thing. It's not an emergency. At the same time, we want to validate that, yeah, you're not used to this, but it's okay. You're not going to die from boredom, and actually it's a really good thing. And tell them it's where creativity strikes. Offer support, because if they're not used to being bored, like I said, it can feel really uncomfortable for them. So help them to be bored. Support them in being bored, because if they're not used to it, they won't really know what to do with it. But then you can gradually withdraw your support. For example, you might start off inviting them to do an activity together with you. And you might just pop away. Obviously, this depends on the age of your children. If they're really young, you might pop away for 5 minutes, come back, check in on them, but gradually extend that time where you're inviting them to just kind of play independently. And as they get more used to it, they'll also be able to start to initiate activities for themselves without needing you to support them with that. But start with shorter periods of boredom time with support and gradually extend, and positively reinforce them for where they are playing independently, where they're being creative, where they're playing really well with a sibling. Just offer them that positive reinforcement before they come whining to you with a complaint about boredom or a fight that they've had with their sibling. Just make sure we're helping them see that they're really capable, that we are really appreciating, them playing independently and being creative and taking that initiative. And ask yourself the question, what else could I'm bored mean? Because sometimes children just say they're bored, but actually it's something else. Maybe they feel lonely. Maybe they're seeking connection or attention or affection. Maybe they're hungry or there's some other need underneath there. So maybe something's challenging. Often they'll say they're bored when they're trying to do schoolwork, when actually what they mean is this is really hard. And it's easier for them to say I'm bored rather than this is hard. So if we can meet that other need before we expect them to be bored, that can help things go smoother. So make sure they're fed, that we've given them some cuddles, given them some love, we fill their cup a little bit before we expect them to go off and do their own thing. Here's a little idea, just so that, because sometimes when you're in the midst of boredom, it can be hard to be creative and think of ideas to do. So a boredom jar is just an empty jar. You can ask your children to decorate it if they wish, make a label, stick things on it, and then have lots of bits of paper where you can write down some ideas for things to do when they feel bored, and do this together with them, get their ideas. I have a bunch of ideas on the next couple of slides that you can put into these, but choose things that your child is going to be on board with. And then when they're bored, they just go and pick out something out of the paper, out of the boredom buster jar, and do that activity. So here are some ideas: an obstacle course, making cards, learning a magic trick, drawing a map of your house, designing your ideal bedroom. So my daughter came up to me a couple of weeks ago and she said, Mama, I want to renovate my room. Can I renovate my room? And she wanted new furniture and she wanted to kick her sister out of the room. And I said, no, that's not happening. But I said, why don't you design your ideal room on paper? Like, why don't you design it in fantasy? And maybe one day when you have your own house, you can make it just like that. So she got fully into this. She spent like a good 2 or 3 days on this, first drawing it on paper. She found a great website online where she could design her own furniture and she could, lay out her room using some like architectural website or something. And then she decided she wants to be an interior designer. So this is such a good idea of how a limit, me saying no, and also allowing her the space to be bored and therefore creative, just spurred this like new passion in her. And sometimes when our kids' time is too structured, we're not allowing them that space to really figure out what they're really passionate about. Write a story using random words. So sometimes I'll just write down a list of 10, like total 5 completely random words and ask the children to write a story using those words. And it just helps them be creative. Design a treasure hunt for your parents or sibling. Design a menu for your ideal restaurant. Do a jigsaw puzzle, make a chatterbox, those little things we used to play with when we were kids. Design your ideal school. I used to get my students to do this in school and they loved it. They came out with some outrageous ideas, but such a good opportunity to be creative, but also to see the things that they would value in a school. Like they had pets and they had roller coasters and this type of food and like a bullying this like thing and like a safe room, and like it's really interesting what they came up with. Make a drum kit out of saucepans and buckets, water the plants, play hopscotch, do some origami, cut pictures out of a magazine and make a collage or vision board. Do we even have magazines anymore? I'm not sure. Make a den, make a play or a skit, collect some leaves and make pictures out of them. Make a family quiz where where you make up questions about family members. That can be quite fun. Or you put together, each member of the family puts together questions about themselves, and then you've got to ask each other. Draw chalk mandala, read a book, make a playlist on Spotify, dance, karaoke, paper airplanes, walk your dog, ride your bike. How many objects can you balance on your head? Make a list of your 10 favorite jokes to share at dinner. Design your own signature. Dress up in your parents' clothes. How much fun. Tidy up your parents' clothes. Write a letter to a relative. Like, we don't write letters anymore. Draw a self-portrait, make up a dance, make a garden out of clay or Play-Doh. How long can you keep a balloon in the air? So there's just a few of my ideas, but you make this your own and get your kids involved so that they have some ideas of things to do. Random adjective in the boredom jar, and they have to come up with something themselves. So this is just a really fun way of helping them to think more creatively and out of the box, where they pick an adjective and they have to think, what could I do around this adjective? For example, colorful could be picking some flowers or drawing a picture or getting dressed up in colorful clothes. Quiet could be they go and have some reading time quietly. Homely could be maybe tidying a room in the house or picking some flowers and putting them on the dining room table. Tidy could be tidying a room. Active could be doing some exercise, a workout. Healthy could be making a healthy snack. Yeah, so generous could be, giving someone a compliment or writing someone a thank you note. So just random words that help them think about things they can do. And maybe you could give them a challenge of like a word a day, get them to do it with their siblings, see what they come up with. It could be something they do together to promote a little bit of sibling bonding. There's just a few ideas there. Maybe you've got older kids like mine. Mine are 11 and 13, and these are things that maybe would have worked great with them when they were younger, and maybe now they're a little bit more resistant. But here are some ideas about when you've got older children, perhaps you've got teenagers, how maybe you can get them on board with a little bit of what we've been talking about. So around limits and habits is to explain why it's important. As I said, as our children get older, they need to know the why behind some of the rules that we're setting. So, and also explain to them, but not with long lectures. In fact, I prefer a coaching approach where you're asking your children questions, helping them think about why some of the rules that we have are important and getting them to come up with the answers, because this gives them a lot more buy-in and they're more likely to stick to rules that when they've had a think about why they're important without us just lecturing them about why it's important. So setting limits collaboratively, we discussed this earlier, getting their input to have more buy-in, and so it feels more relevant for them. Maybe if there are struggles around screen time and you've got teenagers and you feel like they're calling the shots and you don't really have a say in how they're using screen time, I say, I really think that screen time is a privilege. It's not a right. And as parents, it is our responsibility to make sure that our children are using screens in a way that is aligned with our family values. And if you feel like that's not happening, it's your responsibility. It's your right to enforce the rules that you feel are right for your child. And really trying to do that with a lot of connection and explanation, not in a really forceful or coercive way. So if that's something that is particularly hard for you, then I would suggest you reach out to somebody who maybe can support you with that, either myself or perhaps a teacher from school or somebody else who can help you to have those conversations with your child, so that you can make sure they're really using screens in a healthy and effective way. With teens, we really need to get interested in what they're interested in. When our kids are younger, they'll happily spend time with us and they're more likely to go along with our agenda. But with teens, we need to get a little bit more in their world. Maybe join in with them, with the games they're playing online, with the shows that they're interested in, show interest in their friends and what's going on in their friends' world, and just try and involve ourselves a little bit more in their world. They may be resistant to this if if they're not used to it, but just like really gently and slowly try to build that connection with them where you can have these sort of open conversations with them. Get one of their friends involved. So teenagers really, obviously, their peers become really important and a big influence on them. So sometimes when we invite their friends over and their friends are in our home, it's a really good opportunity to connect with their friends, and maybe even take their friends and them out to the mall or something, and just in the car have sort of friendly conversations with them and their friends will probably think, they're more likely to think that you're cool, and they might even say, your mum's really nice, or she's really friendly, and our teen starts to see us through the eyes of their friends. And yeah, just it's really important that they do have time with friends, and where we can, have some degree of influence over their peer relationships by being a little bit, obviously we don't want to be in their face, but just to be around and a little bit involved and building relationships with their friends as well. Here are super quick ways to connect, which are low resource, low effort, low time, and maximum connection. So these are super simple. Like they take a minute or two, like they don't take long and they don't take any resources. So I love these. And they just help get you laughing and connected as a family. So thumb war, 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare a thumb war. It's fun. Arm wrestling, we love arm wrestling championships. Like we get my 2 daughters against my husband, and it like creates a little bit of sibling bonding there, and it's just really fun. Hide and seek in the house or outside, just being really silly, like so much silliness here. Playing catch with a ball, like the most simple thing, which is actually really fun. We sometimes forget the simple things. Tickling, as long as it's consensual. The sock game is brilliant. So it's where you have a clear space on the floor where preferably no furniture that you can injure yourself on. Everybody puts a pair of socks on, and the aim of the game is to remove other people's socks whilst keeping your own socks on. And whoever's the last person to have a sock on wins. It leads to a lot of mayhem and laughter and a little bit of physical play, but it's good fun. Making each other laugh. So, one person has to make everybody laugh, and the last one not to laugh wins. Again, lots of space for silliness. Non-blinking competition. You have to stare at each other and not blink. Good for connection, eye contact, just being present with each other. The yes-no game is where you're not allowed to say yes or no, or nod your head or shake your head, and you have to try and trip each other up. So this is just like a fun game to play over a mealtime or something, just to bring a little bit of fun into the mealtime. So that's all that I have to share with you today. I hope this has been super helpful. There's been a lot of information here, and I hope that you can take out bits that are relevant and useful. And even if it's just one thing, I hope you can put that into practice. Maybe there's areas that I've spoken about in this masterclass, and you're thinking, oh, I'd really love more support in that, or I'd really love to talk about that more or go deeper into it, or I've tried that and it's not working. I need a little bit more support in this area. So if that's you, then I have an opportunity or one-to-one intensives. So this is either between 1 to 3 sessions of about 75 minutes each, where you can take fast action in one area of parenting that is currently causing tension in your home. So I've outlined 3 areas that parents typically like to talk about in intensives. One is managing screen time. So this helps you step into that empowered leadership and set limits that are in alignment with your values, so a child can develop a healthy relationship with their devices and the digital world without the risks of addiction and exposure to undesirable online content and relationships. So if you listening to this, you're like, I'm not happy with how screen time looks in our house. I need some support in what the rules should be, how to enforce the rules, how to get my kids on board because I've tried and they're not listening, then that's a great opportunity to book in an intensive. Setting limits using the 5C framework, and how to engage cooperation from your children using empowered, calm connection without yelling, threatening, bribing, and pleading. So this is particularly helpful for parents who find typically certain times of day, for example, mornings or bedtimes, or like homework time is really challenging. There's certain times of day that typically cause a lot of stress and they kill the joy for many parents in the home and children. And you want to set limits, but you don't want to do it in a way that is like yelling, or where you're like, please, where you're pleading, where you're threatening and bribing, because these are not the most effective ways of setting limits. And if that's you, and maybe there's a particular area that you're finding is particularly sticky or not able to move past it and resolve it, then using this 5C framework, as well as a problem-solving approach that I teach parents, can be really helpful to go deeper into. And then maybe you want to talk around self-care. It could be managing your own emotions, or maybe helping your child, equipping your child to manage their emotions. It could be you're experiencing lots of anger or rage, guilt around how you're feeling, anxiety, frustration, and you need support to reconnect. You need some tools and support to reconnect yourself so that you can really connect deeply with your child and build that genuinely deep connection where you feel so present, you feel joy to be around them, and you feel confident that you're building really solid lifelong memories with your child. And this is sometimes that I know a lot of parents can feel stuck in, because you've got a lot of things going on in your own world. So I can support you with this as well. If you're interested in a one-to-one intensive, then please email me or send me a DM either on Instagram or Facebook. To talk about how that works, and I'd be very happy to support you. But I hope you found this masterclass useful, and I hope that it's going to help you to bring more joy into your home in the holidays, to look after yourselves, whilst also making sure and feeling really confident that your children are thriving, not just in the holidays, but in their whole life. And I know that many of the things I've talked about in this masterclass are going to be useful for you to apply to all areas of your parenting, not just during the holidays, but all the time. I'd love to hear what resonated for you, what you found really helpful in what you've heard today. If you have any questions, please do reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me your time. I really appreciate that, because I know you're busy, and I hope you found this helpful. Thank you very much for being here, and wishing you all the best.